I always thought grief ended with the funeral. I was wrong. It lingers. It seeps into the walls, into your routine. It reshapes everything, including how you love. When my sister died in that accident, everything changed. Not just for me but for Callum. He was only 10. I wasn't supposed to raise him. I wasn't prepared. I was 31, living in a one-bedroom apartment downtown, still figuring out whether I wanted a second date with the same man. But I brought him home with me the night after the service. He curled up on the couch and didn't cry, just stared ahead with those impossibly calm eyes, the same slate gray as his mother's. "I'll stay with you," he had said. "I don't want to go to strangers." So I learned to be a mother in a way. Not perfectly. Not completely. But I was there. For every scraped knee, every birthday, every bad grade. And he grew, taller than me by the time he turned 16, smarter than I ever was, with a quiet kindness that unnerved people his age. Now he was 21. Still living here. Still pouring 2 cups of coffee in the morning. Still sitting across from me at the old oak table we bought secondhand 8 years ago. But something was changing. I couldn't name it at first. A glance that lingered too long. A silence that didn't feel empty. The way he stood too close, not by accident but because he wanted to. And how I didn't step away. It started on an ordinary Tuesday. The house was wrapped in late winter quiet, a thin layer of frost on the windows, the radio humming some old folk song in the background. I was making soup. He walked in from his shift at the bookstore, snowflakes still clinging to his collar. "You didn't have to cook," he said, pulling off his gloves. "I wanted to." He smiled. That half-smile of his that always looked like he was keeping a secret. "Smells like something comforting." "Carrot ginger," I replied, turning to stir the pot. We ate in near silence. Not tense, just easy. We had become good at that, the kind of quiet that meant something. Then, somewhere between washing the dishes and drying them, he spoke. "Do you ever think about leaving?" "Leaving what?" "This town. The house. The version of your life you didn't choose." I paused, the dish towel going still in my hands. "More often than I should." He nodded as if he'd expected that. And then, "Would you take me with you?" I looked up. He wasn't teasing. His eyes, those still gray eyes, were steady. "Why would you want to come?" "Because," he said softly, "you're the only place I've ever felt like I belonged." The air between us shifted just slightly. I felt it like a string pulled too tight, humming with unspoken things. "I don't think I could go without you," I whispered, not sure why I said it. But it was true. He smiled again, but it was different this time. Something in it held a question. And a quiet hope. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation, the softness in his voice, the way my name had sounded when he said it that morning. Not Aunt Nora. Just Nora. Like I was a person, a whole person, not a role. And that scared me more than I wanted to admit. I didn't bring it up the next morning. Instead, I went about my day with the practiced rhythm of someone trying not to think too much. Laundry, emails, coffee. I told myself it was nothing. That Callum's words the night before were just remnants of his old dependency. The emotional leftovers of a boy I had helped raise. But they weren't. He moved through the house that morning like he was aware of something unsaid between us. He didn't speak of leaving again, or of the quiet ache we'd both skirted around the night before. But his gaze held something steadier now. Like he was waiting. It wasn't until 2 days later, while sitting at the little dining table with a glass of wine and the sunset flooding the room with honey-colored light, that I asked. "If you could go anywhere, just pack up and leave, where would you go?" Callum didn't hesitate. "The coast. Somewhere small. Windy. Quiet. Where the sky feels bigger than the world." I nodded slowly. "That sounds good." "You?" he asked. "Where would you run to if you could?" I hesitated. "I think I'd go where no one knows me. Not as someone's sister or aunt or neighbor. Just me. For once." He smiled, but there was something sad behind it. "Maybe we want the same thing." That night I did something impulsive. I looked up cottages near the ocean, remote, wind-battered places tucked along the Oregon coast, where the trees lean inland from decades of salt and storm. I found one. Small, old, all wood and stone and sea-facing windows. It was available. Off-season. Quiet. Perfect. I booked it before I could talk myself out of it. In the morning I told him. Callum was pouring coffee when I walked into the kitchen. I did something, I said cautiously. His eyebrows lifted. Dangerous. Maybe. He tilted his head, amused. Do tell. I booked us a place. The coast. That little town near Manzanita. The surprise flickered across his face, then something warmer. You're serious? I nodded. We leave Sunday. He blinked, then slowly smiled. You booked it for us? For us. There was a pause. Then he stepped forward and touched my hand, barely, lightly, but it was enough. My pulse quickened. His fingers brushed mine as he took the mug from me. Thank you, he said, and it felt like more than gratitude. It felt like relief. We arrived just after sunset. The drive had been long, the kind that frays your nerves a little before it settles into comfort. He'd done most of the driving. I'd picked the music. The silence between songs had grown richer with time, less like an absence and more like a rhythm we shared. The cottage was even smaller than I expected. 2 bedrooms, 1 shared living space, a deck that opened right onto the dunes. The air smelled like salt and cedar. Inside it was warm. The heat was already running and a basket of firewood waited by the hearth. He set down the bags while I moved to the window. You could hear the ocean. That night we cooked together. Pasta. Simple. Familiar. He moved beside me in the narrow kitchen with a quiet ease, brushing against me in ways that felt intentional but unassuming. Do you think you'll ever fall in love again? He asked suddenly as I chopped parsley. The question caught me. I don't know, I said slowly. Sometimes I think maybe I already have and just never realized it. He nodded, setting down the spoon. Me too. We didn't talk after that. Just finished dinner, poured 2 glasses of wine and took them outside. The deck was cold but not unkind. The wind off the sea brought goosebumps to my arms, and before I could speak, Callum stood and disappeared inside. He returned with a blanket. Without asking, he draped it over my shoulders, then slid into the chair beside me, close enough to share its warmth. Do you miss her? He asked, staring into the dark waves. All the time. I think part of me is still trying to live the life she wanted for me. But I don't even know what that is anymore. She'd be proud of who you are, I said, my voice low. Not for anything you've done. Just for how you see the world. He turned to me, his face shadowed by moonlight. I only see it this way because of you. The words landed in a place I hadn't opened in years. We didn't touch. We didn't speak again for the rest of the night. But something had changed. We both felt it. And neither of us tried to run. We fell into a rhythm over the next 2 days. Mornings were coffee and barefoot walks along the shore. Afternoons were books read on opposite sides of the couch. Shared silence interrupted only by the soft clink of mugs or the occasional laugh at something unspoken. At night we'd cook, drink wine, and sit on the deck long after the stars had appeared, each evening deepening the quiet tether between us. There was no need to speak of what we were feeling. It lived in the spaces between our words. It was the way Callum's eyes lingered when I smiled. The way his hand would brush the small of my back when we passed each other in the narrow kitchen. The way we looked at each other and then looked away, not out of shame but out of the unbearable weight of recognition. He wasn't my son. I hadn't birthed him. I hadn't even been a true mother, not in the traditional sense. But I'd been something, and whatever this was becoming, it didn't cancel that. It simply layered over it like memory and echo, something tender and strange and entirely our own. On the 3rd night the storm came. It announced itself with a low rumble just after dusk, the wind pushing against the cottage like a restless hand. The rain followed in sudden sheets, drenching the deck, darkening the sky, and turning the sea into a field of gray fury. Guess that rules out the stargazing, I said, watching the downpour from the window. Callum stood behind me, arms crossed loosely over his chest, the collar of his sweatshirt still damp from his earlier walk. We could stay by the fire. I was hoping you'd say that. He moved first, kneeling to stack logs into the hearth. I poured 2 fingers of whiskey into our mugs, the warm scent rising into the room as the first flames caught. When I sat down, he joined me on the floor, cross-legged, our knees brushing beneath the blanket I had draped over both of us. Neither of us spoke for a long time. The fire crackled softly, the rain tapping against the windows like fingertips. Then he broke the silence. Do you ever feel like you missed your real life? He asked. Like you made 1,000 choices for other people, and now you're standing somewhere you never meant to be? I looked into the fire. Every day. I think that's what I'm afraid of. Ending up where I don't belong. Loving someone who doesn't see me. You don't have to settle, Callum. Not ever. His voice was lower now. And what if I've already seen what I want? What if I'm afraid of reaching for it because I don't want to ruin what little I have? I turned to him then. The firelight painted shadows across his face. His expression was unreadable, guarded and wide open all at once. My heart was beating too fast. I wasn't sure what I was about to say. All I knew was that the storm outside was nothing compared to the one building inside me. I think, I said carefully, there are people we're meant to love, even if the world tells us not to. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is admit it. He didn't move. Didn't blink. Are you admitting it? He asked quietly. I felt my breath catch. I don't know what I'm doing, I confessed. But I can't pretend anymore that I don't feel something. He nodded slowly and then, in the softest, most deliberate motion, he leaned his head against my shoulder. It was not romantic. Not overtly. But it was everything. I sat there, unmoving, the heat of his skin warming the side of my arm, his breath evening out against my neck. I wanted to cry, not from sadness, but from the unbearable sweetness of being understood, seen, chosen, even in silence. I don't want to lose this, I said. You won't, he whispered. I closed my eyes and let the firelight dance behind my lids. The storm roared beyond the walls, but inside the room there was only quiet. Only warmth. Only him. The next morning something had shifted again. He made breakfast, eggs and toast and black coffee. I sat at the table wrapped in a wool blanket, watching him move around the tiny kitchen like he'd always belonged there. He caught me looking and smiled. What? Nothing, I said, smiling back. You just seem different here. I think I like who I am here, he replied. With you. That day we drove up the coast to a secluded overlook I had once visited years ago. A cliffside trail that ended in a bench carved into the rock facing the sea. We sat for hours watching the waves crash below, speaking only when we had something real to say. What happens when we go home? He asked as the sky began to darken. I didn't have an answer. So instead I took his hand in mine. Not out of desperation, but out of truth. It fit easily, naturally, like we'd been trying not to do this for years. He looked down at our joined hands, then up at me. You're not scared? He asked. I'm terrified, I admitted. But not of you. We didn't speak on the drive home. The road unwound like a ribbon of memory, pine trees blurring past the windows, mist curling through the valleys. Callum's hand rested loosely on the gearshift, and every now and then, our arms brushed as he shifted lanes. I stared out the window, thinking about how the ocean had made everything feel weightless, like the rules didn't apply out there. But now we were heading back into the world that remembered. Back into doorways labeled with roles. Nephew. Aunt. Guardian. Boy. Woman. The cottage had given us a pocket of air. Now we were re-entering gravity. And still I didn't regret it. I glanced at him as we exited the freeway. The way his jaw tensed when we passed familiar landmarks. The way his gaze flicked to mine at every red light, like he was checking that I hadn't changed my mind. I hadn't. We arrived home just after dusk. The air was colder here, thinner somehow. The house felt smaller than when we left it. I carried in the bags. Callum brought in the groceries we'd picked up on the way. He stood at the kitchen island, staring at the fridge like he didn't remember what went where. I watched him from the hallway, my coat still draped over my arm. Hey, I said gently. He turned. Are you okay? Callum hesitated, then nodded. Yeah. Just, I don't want to lose it. What we found. I took a step toward him. We didn't find it on the trip. It's always been there. His breath caught slightly. But what do we do with it? I didn't have a perfect answer. Only this. We hold it where it's safe. We protect it. Even if we don't name it. Over the next few weeks we fell back into something resembling normal. But nothing was quite the same. He still drank coffee with me in the mornings. Still left his books scattered on the living room armchair. Still stood behind me at the sink after dinner and quietly dried each dish I passed him. But there was a new presence in those silences. A weight. A current. We had let the truth into the room and now it lived with us. There were moments when we almost broke it. One night I stepped into the laundry room and found him standing there folding towels, one in his hands, one slung over his shoulder. His eyes met mine as I reached for the detergent. Neither of us moved. I could hear my heart beat. Could see the question in his face. Could feel the answer rising in mine. But I stepped back. Not out of fear but out of reverence. Some things you don't break by rushing. Some things are sacred because they aren't seized. Then something unexpected happened. I received a call from a residency program, an invitation to teach writing in a remote coastal town in Maine. 6 months. All expenses paid. A cabin by the water. My own space. My own words. For the first time in years, the world was offering me something for me. When I told Callum we were sitting in the garden, he didn't interrupt. When I finished, he nodded slowly. You have to go. I don't want to go if it means losing you, I admitted. You won't, he said. You're not going alone. I blinked. What? He turned to me, steady and sure. I'm coming with you. I'll work part-time, right, do whatever. I don't care. I just want to keep living, in whatever this is. With you. I stared at him. People will talk. I stopped caring what people think the day I realized no one has ever seen me the way you do. And just like that, the decision made itself. We left 3 weeks later. No grand declarations. No posted photos. Just 2 names on a lease and a shared rhythm built from years of quiet understanding. The cabin was everything we'd hoped for. There was snow in the mornings and the sea just visible through a break in the trees. We spent long afternoons writing in separate corners, then met in the middle, for dinner, for walks, for the simple joy of presence. We never spoke of titles. We never tried to define what we had found. We just let it be. And in that freedom something beautiful happened. Love, unforced, unclaimed, became a place we lived, not a boundary we had to guard. One evening in late March we sat on the porch, wrapped in a thick quilt, watching the stars come out. He was quiet, his hand warm against mine beneath the fabric. I used to be afraid, he said, that I would always want something I could never have. And now? I asked. He turned to me, his eyes calm and sure. Now I know I already have it. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I leaned my head against his shoulder and we watched the sky together. In stillness. In truth. In love. Not the kind that shouts its name from rooftops, but the kind that carves its initials in the heart of a quiet life. And we stayed there. Chose each other again. Every single day after.